Hello and welcome to my channel friends. This is your Govindraj. Thank you very much for all your views, subscriptions and sharing my videos. And today we are going to discuss on Code on Wages 2019, key changes and its implications. In the previous videos, we talked about the draft rules on Code on Wages. We also discussed about the changes which are related to payment of bonus. But however, we did not discuss the overall changes and their implications. And in this video, we are going to discuss about these changes and implications. So let's proceed, friends. So before we proceed on the changes and its implications, let's understand the preliminary details about this Code on Wages 2019. See, if you look at this code, this originally, the Code on Wages Bill, which was introduced in August 10, 2017, because this did not go through in the Lok Sabha because the 16th Lok Sabha has been dissolved. And again, this bill was reintroduced in 17th Lok Sabha on 23rd July 2019 after incorporating certain suggestions of the Parliamentary Standing Committee. So after that, what happened is the Parliament cleared the bill, and also this bill is received the assent of the President. Now the Code on Wages is notified as an act. However, the code is not implemented yet because there is something called appointed date in the code that needs to be fixed by the central government, and also for implementation rules are necessary. So the central government has already framed the rules, and the draft rules are issued for public objections, and that time limit is also fixed. And now we are waiting for the implementation of the rules or the notification of the rules, and also fixation of appointed date. After this, what happens is the state governments are also required to frame the rules for the implementation. So the state governments may adopt the central rules, or they may have their own set of rules. On the draft rules, I have already talked about in this video. If you are interested, please watch this video for details. Now let's also look into the objective of the code. See, the objective of the code is to amalgamate, simplify and rationalize the relevant provisions of the four central legislations. And the wage code, as I said, consolidates four important legislations which are on the payment of wages. They are especially on the wages, which are the Minimum Wages Act 1948, the Payment of Wages Act 1936, the Payment of Bonus Act 1965, and the Equal Remuneration Act 1976. And 115 sections of all these four legislations are now brought under 69 sections in 9 chapters. And if you look at the code, all the applicable definitions are brought together in the first chapter. This means a single definition holds good for the entire code and all the topics of the code. And it is also similar to all other 3 codes as well, and the structure is maintained similar to other codes. And if you look at the framework of the code, there are certain common chapters which are applicable to all the topics of the code, which are basically preliminary, advisory board, payment of dues, claims and audit, inspector cum facilitator, offences and penalties, miscellaneous. These are the common chapters which are going to be relevant for all the chapters. However, there are certain chapters which are very specific. For example, since the code also covers Equal Remuneration Act 1976, the components of this piece of legislations are only included in 2 sections of the first chapter, and there are separate chapters for minimum wages, payment of wages and payment of bonus are provided in separate chapters because these are very detailed provisions. Now going ahead, friends, The code is applicable to both organized and unorganized sector. And also, if you look at the intention of the code, this code also would like to cover the domestic workers as well, and also importantly unorganized sectors. And if you look at, there is a employee definition is provided, and this covers all employees irrespective of their job title or designation, including managers and supervisor. But also note this, friends, there is a worker definition is also provided, but this worker definition does not have any much significance, only in case of one or two places while defining dispute related to bonus and other matters. This is being used because the code on wages covers all employees, and whether it is managers or supervisors or clerks or workers. Therefore, the worker definition does not have much significance. And if you look at the employer definition also include contractor. So there is an equal responsibility is also brought on the contractor. So this is one of the major changes and implications. We will also talk about on the responsibility of payment of wages, whether there is any change or there is no change. And there is a uniform wage definition is provided in the code, and this is being discussed lengthy, and of course because this comes with a complexity and because of the inclusion part and exclusion part. So on this topic we have already discussed in this video, and please watch this video for details because there are a lot of interpretations are going on this. I too have certain interpretations, and if you want to know my interpretation, you can always be in touch with me, and some of the details are already provided in this video. You can watch this video for more details. And now, because of this wage definition in the inclusion part, basic and DA is provided. Now the labor department or the compliance officials can now insist to maintain basic and DA at least as fixed in the notification. And if you look at so far the law, which is settled law, even if you have not fixed the basic and DA as per the minimum wages fixed, if your overall wages is more than the minimum wages, then that is sufficient compliance of law, because considering the definition of wages under Minimum Wages Act 1948. But now this situation is going to change because of this wage definition. So this is one of the major implications which everybody is to be aware and needs a proper looking and correction. If you look at the code, there is a lot of importance is given for the gender diversity in establishment, and to an extent even the government can advise the employer to maintain certain portion or certain level of women employees in their establishment based on the suitability. So this is one of the important major implications for industrial establishments. There are provisions are provided to initiate prosecution in case violations by the employers. Even these prosecutions can be initiated by the employee or trade union in addition to the inspector under the code. So therefore, this is one of the important implications, especially for employers, which they need to be very careful. And going ahead, let's also look into responsibility for payment of dues of contract employees. See, if you look at the Contract Labor Act 1970, it provided that if the contractor fails to pay the wages of the contract employees, then the principal employer is responsible. In the same lines, the code also under section 43 clearly talks, if the contractor fails to pay the wages, then it is the responsibility of the principal employer. The code does not stop here. The code is covering all the dues which are payable to the employees. Therefore, the code also covers important dues including bonus as well. So if you look at the current status of law, the payment of bonus is not the responsibility of the principal employer. If there is no stipulation in the agreement, then the contractor is responsible to pay the bonus. Now this situation is going to change because of the section 43. If the contractor fails to pay the wages and including the dues which are also the statutory bonus, then the principal employer he is held responsible. And if you look at the draft rules already contains that the principal employer is liable for the payment of minimum bonus for contract employees. Now we have to wait and see what is going to come in the final rules, which gets notified very shortly. Keep watching this channel for more updates on these kind of issues. And going ahead, friends, now the limitation to claim the dues of the employee, if you look at the old legislation, basically these four legislations, which are minimum wages, payment of wages, equal remuneration and payment of bonus, the limitation was provided from 6 months to 2 years. Now the limitation is set at 3 years. The employee he has got 3 years time to claim his dues if the employer has not paid so far. So therefore this is also one of the implications for employer under the code on wages, and the employee will have a time until 3 years to claim the dues. And now look at how the inspector or inspection system is going to happen. Now this inspector has renamed as inspector cum facilitator, and he will have the role of facilitation in addition to inspection. And there are provisions are made for web based inspection scheme. That means going ahead in the future the inspection may happen virtually and through electronically, and also the inspector may be appointed on a random selection basis. So these are the changes which are going to happen in the labor law field, and also including the code on wages 2019. And of course there are offenses for the violations of the provisions of the code, and there is a graded penalty system is provided, so which starts from 10,000 to up to 50,000 and 1 lakh. So these are various penalties are provided for the contraventions of the provisions of the code. However, the code comes with composition or compounding of offenses. That means the employer, by paying 50% of the maximum fine provided for that kind of offense, then he can pay that amount with the gazetted officer appointed under this act, and he can get discharged from the offense. However, this compounding or composition is applicable only where the offense does not involve imprisonment. However, in other courts, even the offenses which involve imprisonment can also be compounded, but in this case in the code on wages 2019 that possibility is not there. And one more change, friends, the executive, which is the bureaucracy, is also provided with the power to inquire and impose penalty on certain offenses. And this trend is also, you can also see in other courts. So there are certain offenses are listed. The executive or the bureaucrats or the officials who are fixed for this purpose, they can also inquire and impose penalty on these offenses. Now going ahead, friends, let's also look into equal remuneration. See, these equal remuneration provisions, if you look at the text of the law, they address much beyond gender discrimination, because the definition of same work or work of a similar nature talks about equality between employees when the skill, effort and responsibility are the same, and also when performed under similar working conditions. So therefore I say the equal remunerations provisions talks beyond gender discrimination, so which we need to be very careful and also understand the provisions of the act. And going ahead, the payment of minimum wages, as I already briefed certain changes, this code intends to cover all employees irrespective of whether it is organized sector or unorganized sector. And going ahead, the scheduled employment concept is no longer exist, and also there is certain clarity is brought on fixing the minimum wages, and the central government now has the authority to fix national floor wages, and the state governments cannot fix less than this floor wages. And the advisory boards which were constituted under the Payment of Minimum Wages Act now have the scope to advise on all the matters of the code. So these are the brief about the payment of minimum wages. Now we will get into payment of wages. If you look at the payment of wages, the The Payment of Wages Act 1936, it provided a wage ceiling for coverage of employees under this act. So now there is no such wage ceiling provided. That means every employee irrespective of the wage ceiling is covered, and the authorized deductions provided and Payment of Wages Act 1936 are largely retained. And two dates were provided for the payment of wages in case of monthly rated employee. If you look at the old law, and that is based on the number of employees. Now there is no such different dates. The payment of wages are required to be made before the end of the 7th day of the succeeding month. So now there is only one date, there are no two dates. And the pending wages in case of the separation of employee due to discharge, dismissal, termination, so the pending wages have to be cleared within 2 working days. And now to this list, the reason of resignation also is getting covered. So even if any employee gets resigned and he gets relieved, the wages have to be paid within 2 working days. So among our fraternity, there is a misconception that the final dues also have to be cleared within 2 working days, but it is not so. The wages of this employee have to be paid within 2 working days, because the dues depends on the handing over of responsibilities, and also there are some assets which belongs to the company. So therefore the provisions of the act talks about only the wages and not the dues. And the total amount of deductions in any wage period from the wages of an employee shall not exceed 50% of such wages. So now the code has got this 50% reduction, 50% deduction criteria maximum. But however, if you look at Payment of Wages Act 1936, it had 50%. And also in case if there is a cooperative society is involved, this was also telling 75% of maximum deduction was allowed. Now there is no 75%. Now it is only 50% of maximum deductions. So these are the major changes which are happening on Payment of Wages Act or the payment of wages related provisions. Now coming back to payment of bonus, see, the concept of bonus and calculation methodology has not undergone any change. However, fixing the ceiling for applicability of the payment of bonus, the wage ceiling now rests with the appropriate government. So today we have 7,000 or minimum wages whichever is applicable, and also there is a wage ceiling of 21,000. So these ceilings can now be fixed by the appropriate government instead of the central government, and this will have a uniformity issues across the country if this does not gets corrected in the going ahead by way of an amendment. And a uniform accounting year commencing on the first day of April is provided. Earlier the employer could have chosen different accounting year. So now nothing doing, now you have to choose only the accounting year which is first day of April, which is provided. And there are reasons which are provided for disqualification of bonus to receive the bonus. So there are different reasons. Now along with these reasons, conviction for sexual harassment is also added. So that conviction word is not very looks to be very not in sync, but otherwise the sexual conviction for sexual harassment is also included as a reason for disqualification to receive the bonus. And look at the bonus shall be paid by crediting it in the bank account of the employee. So earlier there was the possibility also to provide or the pay in cash. Now the text of the law says you have to credit it to the bank account only. Now the appropriate government can exempt any establishment having regard to any other scheme of profit sharing if it is established in the establishment. So there is also exemption possible. So these are the changes and implications which I briefly talked about on Code on Wages, and also the links of this video I have provided in the description box. You can watch for more details. If you still have any doubts, friends, my coordinates are provided here. You can always get in touch with me for any clarifications or interpretation issues or for my opinions. So friends, so we have discussed key changes and implications which are related to Code on Wages 2019, and as I said, the videos which are connected videos are provided. The links are provided in the description box. You can also watch. Now there is a question time for you. I talked about in the Payment of Wages Act 1936, to make the act applicable, then the wage ceiling is provided. So what is that wage ceiling? You can comment in the comment box and let me know your answer. The wage ceiling which is applicable for the coverage of employees under the Payment of Wages Act 1936, and I will be happy to come back to you on your comments. So friends, so far you have watched my video. Thank you very much, and please do share this video to your contacts, and don't forget to like and also comment my video. Thank you very much, and see you soon friends.